Preface. Language, in written or spoken form, has informed and entertained us for thousands of years. Complex ideas or even stories were summarized and distilled into an image, then eventually words. As our cumulative cognitive abilities developed, entire philosophies or religions could be referenced by a symbol, name, or word, usually with an ism at the end. Think of Christianity, Islam, the Star of David, or the dollar sign. Over time, our language has incorporated these words and ideas, with each culture or time having its own perspective. In this fashion, language and ideas evolved. As language and writing became more widespread, more people were able to join this great conversation, in the sense of a cumulative understanding between peoples and cultures on this earth over time. This resulted in additional jargon, importation of foreign words into cultures, and a general raising of the social consciousness. In any form of communication, it is best if both parties share the same vocabulary, or at least share the same understanding of the words used. At present, we find ourselves in a position where there are increasing instances of misunderstandings, due to the gap in knowledge or understanding between the two parties in a dialogue, conversation, or even a reader of a text. In search of scholarly recognition, intellectuals make reference to other accepted scholars who have gone before. This allows for systematic and agreed methods of exploring ideas and allows others to trust and rely on a particular contribution to science, history, literature, philosophy, etc. In theory, this approach is sound and has withstood the test of time. In practice, only a very small group of intellectuals and scholars are able to dedicate the time necessary to keep abreast of the ideas available. These scholars have little choice but to rely on the veracity of that which they read. Those who are not scholars happily incorporate the summaries of these works by way of a word or phrase that encapsulates the idea. In this fashion, complex ideas and concepts are transmitted in viral-like manner into society. Communism, Buddhism, Judaism, and capitalism are examples of complex concepts of moral constructs which are loaded with history and subtext, yet are known and used by everyone. Subsequent students of these ideas would add their own twist to this foundation, creating something new. Maoism, New Age spiritualism, modern philosophy, taxation and redistribution of wealth. Whether these isms are then correctly implemented or understood is not necessary. The unintended consequences of this may be that the idea mutates and an even greater idea or concept emerges. In our own current digital age, the rate at which ideas can be transmitted, mutated, and propagated increases exponentially. Notwithstanding the above, it is my attempt to write in a non-scholarly fashion, in a way that everyone can understand. I am operating on the assumption that each of us brings something unique to this book. We will each garner something personal from reading this and will likely experience differences in feelings or thoughts each time we read this revelation. From my experience, reading slowly and at times aloud provides the best effect. I have been asked under what conditions I received this revelation. To answer this, I will need to give you some background about myself. As a child, I was anxious to grow up. I lacked patience in general and directed my energies toward my studies. I wanted to know as much about everything as I could. Chemistry, computer programming, and all things science fascinated me. As an adolescent, I booked myself into a monastery for as long as it took to read the Bible from cover to cover. I was surprised at my parents' wholehearted support in that. I worked on very early artificial intelligence programming with the University of Manitoba Health Sciences Biochemistry Department. My brother was a medical student and recommended me at the age of 15 to apply for the job. Amazingly, I got it. I then did my basic training with the Canadian Reserves prior to completing my matriculation. Thereafter, I traveled as a hitchhiker throughout Europe and the Middle East. I wanted real-life experiences to go alongside my theoretical life experiences, vicariously enjoyed through my reading and studies. I climbed the pyramids, slept on the side of roads, and chiseled pieces of the Berlin Wall just days after it came down. I was a first-hand witness to the collapse of the USSR in the Eastern Bloc countries of Europe. I enjoyed traveling, and after just over a year of this, I realized that if I didn't return to civilization, I might find myself enjoying life on the road indefinitely. I returned to academia and completed my teaching degree, which I reasoned to myself would be useful when traveling. During a 4-month summer session after this degree, I went to mainland China. I had studied Mandarin for a year before this, as I anticipated being in areas where no English was spoken. This was a wise assumption. It was 1993, and China was just opening up. I then returned to Canada to complete my law degree, which specialized in commercial and tax law. My life's trajectory then took me into business, and I found myself in London, UK. Business was very kind to me, and I found myself leaving the UK in 2012 to pursue the next phase of my life. It took 3 years of a self-imposed life of exile before I was visited upon with what I have written herein. I awoke in the early hours one wet January morning in Guernsey with something I had never experienced before: peace of mind. I had seen with great clarity a vision of existence. Serenity descended upon me. My impatience dissipated. It was as though 45 years of impatiently banging against the boundaries of my existence and understanding of the world came together all at once and presented the simplicity of all things. And so I wrote it down. Each word weighed heavily upon me. Each sentence represented volumes of thought and experience. It was the single most powerful and personal experience I have ever had. It was the closest moment I have ever come to having a truly religious experience. My whole being had communed with something, and I wanted to articulate this in a way that didn't glorify my experience nor denigrate anyone else's experience. Without sounding ridiculous or pompous, I finally understood the words that had been written and spoken through the ages on this subject. It was the moment when words became my reality. The following is my attempt to articulate this revelation as it was understood by me. Any failure to communicate rests with me. I have employed a style of writing which is meant to emphasize each word and sentence of the revelation. The objective is for me not to tell you what this means to me, but rather to allow the text to reflect your own thoughts and experiences. Understandably, my perspective and bias is evident in how I set out the type, layout, pauses, and way in which you, the reader, and now you, the listener, are obliged to read and hear my writings. I have tried to minimize my impact where it is possible in order to allow for this reflection of your own thoughts to be experienced. You may have a totally different experience after reading or hearing this than me or anyone else. If that is the case, I have succeeded in creating a message and mirror in the words that follow. After the primary text, I have provided a commentary which sets out my thoughts on the revelation on a line-by-line basis. Hopefully, this provides some insight as well. I set out in consequences some lateral thought associated with the revelation. I then try to set out some practical applications of the revelation in the epilogue. I hope this resonates with you, as it has with me. Baron A. Deschauer, Guernsey, 2016.